At the Yangon Deep Water Port, the world's biggest automated port, giant robot cranes are lifting 47 millions every year. These containers are heading to 180 different countries. And here's the shocking part, not a single American made part in the entire operation. Just 30 miles away, Chinese scientists are testing a satellite that can send secret messages that nobody in the world can crack, not even America. 2,000 miles south, China's newest aircraft carrier is launching stealth fighters that match anything America has. This isn't science fiction, this is happening right now. And most Americans have no idea. For 75 years, America has been the king of the world. We had the strongest military. We invented the best technology. Our economy set all the rules. Everyone used the dollar. American companies led every major industry. This was the American century. But it's ending. Not because America gave up, because China spent decades building a master plan to take it all away. And it's working. By 2035 to 2040, China will be the world's biggest economy. They'll lead in artificial intelligence and quantum computers. They'll be the strongest military power in Asia. They'll control an economic zone with over half the world's population. America will still be powerful, but we won't be number one anymore. That spot will belong to China. Let me show you exactly how this is happening and what it means for your future. To understand China's strategy, you need to understand how empires rise and fall. The pattern repeats throughout history. The top dog gets lazy, fights too many wars, runs up massive debt, and loses its edge. Meanwhile, a rising power builds economic strength, invests in technology, avoids expensive wars, and waits for the perfect moment to take over. Look at Britain in 1870. They controlled a quarter of the world. British factories made 32% of everything manufactured on Earth. The British Navy ruled the seas. Everyone used British pounds. Britain seemed unbeatable. But underneath, Britain was rotting. Companies got lazy and stopped innovating. Factories became inefficient. Britain was spending a fortune maintaining colonies everywhere. Debt was piling up. Meanwhile, America was rising fast. By 1900, we were making twice as much steel as Britain. We were inventing electricity, cars, and oil refineries. We were building railroads everywhere. By 1914, we'd already passed Britain as the world's largest economy. World War I finished the job. Britain won the war but came out broke. Meanwhile, America became the world's banker. By 1944, the dollar replaced the pound. American military protected the world. The American century had begun. That transition took 74 years. Now apply this exact same pattern to today. America in 2025 looks just like Britain in 1914. We're stretched thin with 750 military bases in 80 countries. We're $36 trillion in debt. That's 125% of our entire economy. Our roads and bridges are falling apart. We moved our factories to other countries, and our politicians can't stop fighting long enough to fix anything. Meanwhile, China is copying the exact playbook we used to beat Britain. Build manufacturing dominance. Invest heavily in technology and infrastructure. Avoid expensive foreign wars. Stockpile gold and resources. Wait for America to weaken itself. Then challenge us everywhere at once. Let me break down the 5 ways China is dismantling American power right now. First, manufacturing domination. China makes more stuff than America, Germany, Japan, and South Korea combined. Think about that. They produce 60% of the world's solar panels, 75% of all batteries, 80% of the magnets in your phone and in our weapons, 70% of all smartphones, and 50% of the world's steel. They build more ships than everyone else combined, more electric cars than all other countries combined. This gives them incredible power. When you control making things, you control the supply chain. When you control supply chains, you decide who gets what. That's geopolitical power. We learned this the hard way during COVID. Suddenly we realized 95% of our antibiotics came from China. 80% of ingredients for all medicines came from China. We couldn't even make face masks because we'd moved all those factories to China. But China isn't stopping at being the world's factory. They're moving into high-tech manufacturing. In 2010, only 30% of what China exported was high-tech. By 2024, it's over 50%. They're selling advanced semiconductors, telecommunications equipment, aerospace parts, electric vehicles, and sophisticated machinery. China exported $340 billion in high-tech goods last year. America only exported $280 billion. Even more important, China is selling less to us and more to everyone else. In 2018, America bought 19% of Chinese exports. Now it's only 15%. Meanwhile, China's trade with Southeast Asian nations hit $950 billion, way more than the $600 billion they trade with us. They're doing $280 billion with Africa and $490 billion with Latin America. This means when we put tariffs on Chinese goods, China just shrugged and sold to other countries instead. The trade war didn't stop China. It made them stronger by forcing them to depend less on us. China is also locking in long-term relationships through the Belt and Road Initiative. They've invested over $1 trillion building ports, railways, highways, and power plants in 150 countries. These aren't gifts. They're strategic investments that create permanent dependencies. The digital Silk Road is even more important. China is building 5G networks, fiber optic cables, and satellite systems across Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Europe. When countries use Chinese technology for their internet, they become dependent on Chinese equipment, Chinese software, and Chinese support forever. Companies like Huawei have installed 5G networks in over 70 countries. These networks will carry the internet traffic, financial transactions, and communications of billions of people, and China will have influence over all of it. America is trying to fight back, but China has already installed infrastructure in most of the developing world. The digital backbone that will define this century is being built by China, not America. Second, technology leapfrogging. China has identified artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, advanced materials, and aerospace as the key technologies of the future, and they're pouring insane amounts of money into these areas. Take AI. China plans to be the world leader in artificial intelligence by 2030. They're spending tens of billions of dollars every year on AI research. Chinese companies like Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance are building AI systems that rival or beat anything in the West. Here's their secret weapon: data. China has 1.4 billion people with almost no privacy protection. Every search, every purchase, every social media post, every person walking past a surveillance camera, all that data feeds their AI systems. American companies are limited by privacy laws. Chinese companies face no such limits. This data advantage means Chinese AI learns faster and performs better in the real world. And AI is the foundation of everything: self-driving cars, robots, drug discovery, financial systems, military targeting, cybersecurity, everything. If China wins AI by 2030, they'll have a permanent advantage that grows over time. China is also racing ahead in quantum computing, the technology that could break all encryption and revolutionize computing. While American companies compete against each other, China's quantum program is coordinated by the government with unlimited funding. Chinese scientists have already launched quantum satellites that can send unbreakable encrypted messages. They've built quantum radar that can detect stealth aircraft. These aren't future projects. They're operational now. But China's biggest advantage might be control of rare earth elements. These are minerals essential for electronics, defense systems, batteries, wind turbines, and advanced manufacturing. China produces 60% and refines 85% of the world's rare earths. America produces 10% and refines almost none. In 2025, China imposed strict export controls on these materials. This wasn't random. It's strategic leverage. If China restricts exports of neodymium, a rare earth used in electric motors, our electric car production slows down. If they restrict gallium and germanium, essential for semiconductors, our chip production suffers. We're trying to rebuild rare earth processing, but it takes years and billions of dollars. China has 40 years of head start. We can't catch up quickly, and they know it. Third, military modernization. For 75 years, American military superiority was absolute. Nobody could touch us. That era is ending. Over the past 15 years, China transformed their military from a defensive force into a fully modern, multi-domain strategic force. Their navy is now the world's largest, with over 370 ships compared to our 290. More importantly, they're building capable modern ships faster than we can. China launched 3 aircraft carriers in 12 years. Their newest, the Fujian, has electromagnetic launch systems that match our newest carrier technology. They can launch planes faster and more efficiently, dramatically closing the gap with us. China also has advanced stealth fighters. The J-35 makes them the only country besides us with 2 operational stealth platforms. The J-35 is designed for carriers, meaning Chinese carriers will soon launch stealth fighters just like ours. But China's most dangerous weapons are their missiles. They've developed anti-ship ballistic and targeting. Chinese satellites track our military in real time. Their anti-satellite weapons can destroy our reconnaissance satellites, blinding our forces. These capabilities serve one purpose: make any American military intervention in Asia so costly and risky that we won't try it. China doesn't need to beat us globally. They just need to make intervention in the Western Pacific unacceptable. And it's working. Every Pentagon war game simulating a fight over Taiwan shows heavy American losses. Multiple carriers sunk, hundreds of aircraft destroyed, thousands of casualties. Those aren't acceptable losses, which means our ability to defend Taiwan is questionable. And if we can't defend Taiwan, our credibility across Asia collapses. Fourth, financial system alternatives. China is systematically building infrastructure to bypass the dollar-dominated financial system. China is driving BRICS expansion and de-dollarization. They hold an estimated 4,000 tons of gold. They've reduced U.S. Treasury holdings from $1.3 trillion to about $770 billion. They've built CIPS, an alternative to SWIFT, the Western Payment Network. CIPS processed $27 trillion in transactions in 2024, more than double what it handled in 2022. This infrastructure lets China trade and invest internationally without touching dollars or Western financial systems. When we froze Russian reserves in 2022, every country watched and learned that dollar reserves can be seized. China is ensuring they never face that vulnerability. China is also creating alternative international institutions. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, founded by China, now has 109 member countries and has financed over $45 billion in projects, competing directly with the World Bank. The new development bank provides financing without the conditions imposed by the IMF and World Bank. These institutions let countries access development money without accepting American demands or political alignment. Countries can choose, align with the U.S. and get dollar financing with political string attached, or align with China and get yuan financing with fewer conditions. More and more countries are choosing China not because they love China, but because China offers a better deal. Fifth, Diplomatic influence and narrative warfare. China's diplomacy emphasizes non-interference in domestic affairs and mutual development. This contrasts with American diplomacy that often demands political reforms and human rights commitments. For many developing countries, Chinese diplomacy is more attractive because it comes with fewer demands. China normalized relations with Saudi Arabia and Iran, simultaneously mediating peace between two bitter rivals. This showed Chinese diplomatic skill in a region where we've struggled for decades. China is expanding partnerships across Africa, where over 40 countries have joined Belt and Road. They're deepening ties with Latin America, traditionally our sphere of influence. They're building relationships with Pacific Island nations. China is also conducting narrative warfare, portraying America as declining and dysfunctional. Chinese media emphasizes our political chaos, rising inequality, crumbling infrastructure, gun violence, and social division. The message is clear. America is declining. China is rising. Align with the future, not the past. This message resonates because it contains truth. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our politics are broken. Our society is deeply divided. Meanwhile, China builds high-speed trains, futuristic cities, and advanced technology. The visual contrast is powerful. Now let me show you the timeline of how this transition will unfold. 2025 to 2030, China continues building capabilities. Their economy grows to about $21 trillion, closing the gap with our $30 trillion. But in purchasing power, China's economy is already 30% larger. China achieves AI leadership by 2030 as planned. They deploy 2 more aircraft carriers. The yuan and CIPs keep processing more trade outside the dollar. American influence in Asia and Africa keeps eroding. 2031 to 2035, China's economy surpasses ours, making them the world's largest economy by any measure. This psychological moment has huge implications. Countries align with economic power. Chinese technological leadership in AI, quantum computing, and advanced materials becomes undeniable. Chinese military capabilities in Asia match ours, making intervention in any Taiwan crisis prohibitively costly. The dollar falls below 50% of global reserves. American alliances start fracturing. We're no longer the sole superpower. 2036 to 2040, China has become the dominant economic power, the technology leader, and the premier military force in Asia. The dollar stabilizes at 35 to 40% of reserves, similar to where the British pound ended up. American standard of living has fallen 20 to 30% as cheap imports disappear. American military power is limited to the Western Hemisphere and Europe. Asia belongs to China. The American century has ended. The Chinese century has begun. This isn't speculation. This is the pattern based on history and current trends. The British to American transition took 74 years. The American to Chinese transition will be faster, maybe 40 to 50 years, because technology accelerates everything today. So who wins and who loses? China obviously wins. They become the world's largest economy, the technology leader, the dominant military power in their region. Chinese companies will dominate global industries. The yuan becomes a major reserve currency. Countries aligned with China win. Nations in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East that build strong ties with China will benefit from Chinese investment and market access. America loses the most. We lose the privilege of printing the reserve currency. We lose the ability to run permanent trade deficits. We lose technology leadership. We lose military dominance in Asia. American living standards fall as cheap imports disappear. This is the inevitable consequence of declining power. Our Asian allies face impossible choices. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines must decide: stick with declining America or accommodate rising China. It's an impossible choice. American workers lose jobs as manufacturing doesn't come back here, but goes to Vietnam, India, or Mexico instead. American consumers lose purchasing power as imports get 30 to 50% more expensive. The cheap goods from China that subsidized our lifestyle for 30 years disappear. American investors lose wealth as Chinese companies dominate global markets. The wealth transfer from this transition is estimated at $20 to $30 trillion over 30 years flowing from us to China. Now let me address the wishful thinking. People say China will stumble, their economy will collapse, demographics will doom them, authoritarianism prevents innovation. This is denial by Americans who don't want to accept decline. Yes, China faces challenges. Their population is aging, their debt is high, their political system is authoritarian. But these challenges don't prevent them from overtaking a declining America. Britain faced challenges in 1900, but we still overtook them. America's challenges are worse. We're politically dysfunctional with gridlock preventing action. We're deeply divided socially. We have $36 trillion in debt with no plan to pay it back. We offshored our manufacturing and can't quickly rebuild it. We're militarily overextended and financially constrained. China's system, while repressive, allows long-term planning and rapid action. When China decides to build high-speed rail, they build 26,000 miles in 15 years. When we decide to build it, we spend 20 years debating and produce nothing. China's authoritarian system has advantages in competition. They can focus resources, suppress dissent, and maintain strategy across decades. Our democratic system, while morally superior, is bad at long-term competition because leadership changes every 4 years and partisan fighting prevents sustained strategy. So what do you do first? Accept reality. The American century is ending. China's rise isn't reversible at this point. Second, diversify. Don't assume American assets will outperform. Consider investments in Asian markets and Chinese companies that will dominate future industries. Third, learn about China. Most Americans know nothing about Chinese history, culture, or strategic thinking. If China will dominate this century, understanding them is essential. Fourth, develop skills valuable in a multipolar world. Skills in technology, engineering, science, and international business remain valuable. Skills dependent on American government or consumer spending are riskier. Fifth, prepare for higher costs and lower living standards. The cheap imports are ending. Prepare for goods costing 30 to 50% more. Sixth, pay attention to Asia. The center of global power is shifting east. What happens in Beijing, Shanghai, and Tokyo increasingly matters more than Washington or New York. Seventh, don't overestimate America's ability to reverse decline. The political will doesn't exist. The financial resources are constrained by debt. The time to rebuild takes decades. America's decline is structural, not temporary. The China challenge isn't future. It's today's reality. China produces more than we do. They're leading in AI. They operate the world's largest navy. They're building infrastructure to bypass the dollar. They're positioned to dominate by 2040. The transition is inevitable, unless America takes dramatic action. And there's no sign we will. Our politics focus on internal battles. Our resources are constrained by debt. Our society is divided. China's unified, focused, and executing a 30-year strategy. This is the same pattern from 1870 to 1944 when we overtook Britain. The rising power builds economic strength, invests in technology, avoids wars, and waits. Then the transition happens through mathematics. The stronger economy wins. In 1944, Britain didn't choose to lose dominance. They lost because we were stronger. In 2040, we won't choose to lose dominance. We'll lose because China will be stronger. The only question is whether you'll recognize this reality before everyone else does and position yourself accordingly. The transition is happening now. The future is being built in Shanghai, not San Francisco. The dominant technology will be Chinese AI. The reserve currency will be multipolar. The military superpower in Asia will be China. Understanding this transition is the first step to navigating it successfully. The American century is ending, the Chinese century is beginning, and it will reshape everything for the next 50 years.